This video is brought to you by Ground News. Over the past couple of days, US President Donald Trump has sent thousands of National Guard troops into Los Angeles following protests against ICE-led immigration raids. This has sparked a furious showdown with Democrat politicians in California, including Governor Gavin Newsom, who's since filed a lawsuit against the federal government that only looks likely to escalate now that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has also called in the Marines. So in this video, we'll explain the ongoing protests in LA, why Trump is cracking down on California, and what could happen next. We're getting ever closer to 1 million subscribers, and 68% of you haven't even subscribed yet, so lend us a hand and subscribe today. First, let's explain the recent events in California. On Friday, protests began in LA and San Francisco after it emerged that Immigration Customs Enforcement, or ICE officers, were carrying out immigration raids to detain suspected undocumented migrants. On Friday, according to ICE, one single operation resulted in the arrest of 44 unauthorized immigrants, with another 77 people taken in the greater LA area on the same day. However, the LA raids, which have occurred in areas with large Latino populations, including LA's Westlake District and Paramount, where the population is 82% Hispanic, sparked protests in the streets and outside federal buildings. And while they have been largely peaceful, there were also violent incidents, including riots, attacks on police, and vandalism, with at least 10 people in LA reportedly arrested on Sunday night, and around 60 arrested in San Francisco. So to quell the clashes, on Saturday, Trump issued a memorandum announcing that 2,000 National Guard troops would be mobilized for 60 days, with around 300 troops sent to LA on Sunday. To do so, Trump used a specific provision from Title 10 of the US Code of Armed Services, Section 12406, which provides 3 sets of circumstances under which the National Guard can be called into service by the President. Firstly, if the US is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation. Secondly, if there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. Or thirdly, if the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. In this case, Trump has invoked the second justification of rebellion to federalize the National Guard in California. Perhaps more concerningly though, Trump's memo also allows the military to be deployed in locations where protests aren't yet taking place, stating that National Guard members will be deployed, quote, at locations where protests are occurring or are likely to occur based on current threat assessments and planned operations. Some figures, including former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's running to be New York City mayor, think this means that Trump is preparing to deploy troops to other cities too, with Cuomo telling Bloomberg Radio on Monday, "I believe it's going to get worse, and it's going to be New York." Anyway, in a series of Truth Social posts on Sunday, Trump referred to what he called violent insurrectionist mobs, radical left protests, and paid troublemakers protesting in LA. And in one of his posts, Trump also claimed that the National Guard had done a great job in LA, although journalists soon pointed out that Trump posted this before the 300 or so National Guard troops had even arrived. At the same time, Trump took the opportunity to attack California's Democratic governor Gavin Newsom, calling him incompetent governor (new scum) and claiming he was unable to handle the task. Trump then later posted saying Newsom should, quote, apologize to the people of Los Angeles for the absolutely horrible job they have done. And then, along with his border czar Tom Homan, insinuated that Newsom could be arrested, telling reporters, if officials stand in the way of law and order, yeah, they will face charges. Homan then clarified on Monday that there was no discussion about arresting Newsom, before another video later emerged of Trump saying, I would do it if I were Tom.
Gavin Newsom he's daring Tom Homan to come and arrest him. Should he do it? I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great. Gavin likes the publicity, but I think it would be a great thing.
Anyway, on Monday, Newsom confirmed that California will sue the US government over its deployment of the National Guard, calling it illegal and unconstitutional, and claiming Trump had manufactured a crisis. Broadly speaking, Newsom's lawsuit makes 2 complaints. The first is that what's happening in California doesn't constitute a rebellion, as required by Section 12406. The second is that the National Guard was deployed without Newsom's consent. For context, the National Guard is typically activated at the request of the state governor, and this is the first time in about 60 years that a president has sent troops under federal control into a state without any request, with the last time being during the civil rights movement when governors were resisting court orders to desegregate public schools. Whether or not Trump can actually do this without Newsom's say-so is unclear. Section 12406 states that orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, although we should say that most legal experts seem to think this just means that the governor needs to be consulted and not that they have effective veto power. So what happens next? Well, at the time of writing, things don't seem to be calming down. Protests have continued into Monday, and US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced that he would be deploying 700 active-duty US Marines from Camp Pendleton to, quote, defend federal law enforcement officers. Almost immediately, Newsom then took to X to accuse Hegseth of behaving illegally, and said he would immediately seek an injunction to prevent this, quote, completely illegal, immoral act. Newsom does have a point here. If these Marines were used for law enforcement activities, it would almost definitely violate the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act, which generally forbids federal troops from participating in civilian law enforcement. While the act itself only applies to the Army and Air Force, another statute, 10 U.S.C. 275, extends the principle to Marines and the Navy, and the only obvious way around this would be for Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act, a controversial 18th century law that grants the president incredibly broad authority to deploy the military domestically, under circumstances that aren't clearly defined. Trump hasn't done this yet, but it looks possible at the moment, and would mark a dramatic escalation. Ultimately, the risk here is that Trump's deployment of federal troops transforms these immigration-related protests into wider protests against Trump's apparently overbearing use of federal power. This also creates a political risk for Trump. While bashing Californian liberals for being too immigrant-friendly and cracking down on rioters will probably play well with many voters, if the debate moves away from the question of immigration towards questions about the balance of power between states and the federal government, then Trump will be on shakier political ground, especially if he has to resort to draconian legislation like the Insurrection Act. If you want to know more about this topic, there's plenty of other outlets reporting about it online. Unfortunately though, it's sometimes hard to tell exactly which way these outlets lean politically, making it difficult to understand exactly how your view of world events is being biased by the sources you're reading. That's where this week's sponsor, Ground News, comes in. Their website and app, developed by a former NASA engineer, allows us to pull back the curtain on media bias and have a look at exactly how each story is being covered. For instance, this story about Trump sending the National Guard to LA has been covered by 137 different sources. We know that around 27 of these have been reported by the left, and 10 of these have been reported by the right. That's not all though. Ground News has tons of genuinely useful features. Take their blind spots feed, for instance. This shows you the stories underreported by one side of the political spectrum or the other. For example, if you lean right, you might have missed this story on California suing Trump over the National Guard deployment. Here at TLDR News, we think that Ground News is an incredibly useful tool for our current media landscape, one that's constantly trying to attract your attention and sway you towards or away from certain political viewpoints. So having a tool that helps you spot this and helps you take action really is a game changer. If you're interested in everything Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage Plan subscription by using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. This limited time offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.